Working in the music industry is hard. I know it. I did it. I'd like to introduce to you an amazing man who has been in the music industry successfully crushing it for 30 years. He's going to share how he broke through, stayed focused, and kept on keeping on in order to build a super successful marketing business. But first, a word from our sponsor, iFreedom Hack Now. If you're looking to take your business to the next level, if you're looking to earn more, if you're looking to love more, if you're looking to be more, then go to ifreedomhacknow.com and go through your 3 keys to freedom training. It's free, it's powerful, and you will love it, won't you? Cue the intro. Welcome to The Real Deal, where we get real about what it takes to succeed. Whether it's wealth, health, relationships, or finding your purpose, we talk to the masters to uncover the secrets to defying the odds and creating your own rock star legacy. I'm Doug, and after working on multiple Grammy-winning records as an author, transformational speaker, and your personal translightenment coach, I'm committed to your growth and success. And now, here's the real deal. There you go. Welcome to The Real Deal on Success. You are in for a treat this evening. We have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Munsey Ricci from Skateboard Marketing. Holy crap, yay! What's going on?
What's going on, dude? How you been?
Amazing. I think the last time we saw each other was in your, which must still be your office, like 25 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, because you were already.
If it was back then, it wasn't this spot. It was the old place in Elmont. That's where that was. The second floor, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my old apartment in Elmont. The place was set up as an office.
Right.
Even my bedroom was part office, except for my bed. You know, I didn't really have much personal space. It was kind of cramped, but it's cool.
Well, I think this is a perfect segue. So let me just, first of all, introduce you. We've known each other for several decades, been in the music industry for, you've been in it obviously for pretty much your entire life. I made my way out of it, but you've mastered the art of marketing, of radio promotion, and you have focused on metal basically and crushed it. I mean, would that be a fair thing? How do you veer much out of that world?
No, pretty much. You know, I've always focused on the same thing. I mean, if you kind of stray from the path and you don't really focus on one thing and one thing only, you know, you kind of, you know, your thought process, the direction of the company, the way you build and your whole business model, it becomes kind of introverted.
Mm-hmm.
And you spread thin, and you never really get the groundbreaking, you know, result that you really want to get. You know, so the one thing I always learned is to try to stay focused and just do what I do best, and that's metal and hard rock. You know, and actually in everything else that kind of goes along with it, whether it's hardcore, industrial, you know, or it's even like, you know, crossover, whether it's suicidal or, you know, leeway or something, depending on who it is. But, you know, if you stay focused and keep your business model in one direction, you know, obviously, and you don't spread yourself thin, obviously you can never go wrong, you know?
Amen. So let's now go to the beginning. Like, how did you find your way into this field of all the opportunities in the world? And you know, so you've been doing this skateboard marketing for 30 years. Tell us the journey. How did you transition? How did you pick this? What, you know, why this kind of, obviously you must love metal, but like, How did you get into it? Why did you get into it?
Oh, I mean, when I was at a really young age, I don't know, I was maybe 11 or 12 or 10. I don't really remember, but I took the Sabotage album from Black Sabbath and the Sabbath Bloody Sabbath album. It was really Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. And I listened to it and I was just like so blown away by it. And after listening to it, I said, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. You know, obviously I don't have Ozzy Osbourne's voice, you know. I don't think too many people do outside of Ozzy.
Yep.
So, you know, I bought a guitar when I was young and I started playing in a band, and obviously we didn't get signed. So I went back to what I really knew best, and that was like being an engineer in a studio, and went back in from there. I went to college, into college, and started doing college radio. And I kind of really liked the whole aspect and the art of promotion. I mean, in most cases, most people think it's just a industry guy picking up the phone and calling radio stations saying, hey, you know, play my record. Hey, did you listen to this? It's really not, you know, it's the complete opposite. But
when you say complete opposite, how do you mean?
Well, most people think that they can just go in and pick up the phone. Oh, I can do that. They pick up the phone and realize that, no, I can't do that. You know, there's a lot of things that come into play, which obviously you're a pro, you know. I mean, you need your relationships, you know. You have to like kind of know how to present yourself. You know, you have to know how not to piss people off, you know, and people kind of learn how not to piss you off. And, you know, everything kind of just goes in a circle and, you know, you kind of learn, oh, so that's how it's done. You know, it's not just picking up the phone and doing stuff, you know, and it's the same thing with a guitar player or a bass player. It's not just picking up their axe and playing a riff. It doesn't work that way. It's got to be from the heart. It's got to be something that you feel, you know. So I just kind of decided at that point that's what I wanted to do. So I went from there. I went to Combat Records, and I was working part-time for CMJ Media. So I used to go in on the weekends and collate the magazine, and I would write some sporadic editorial, you know, so, you know, in the magazine. So that's kind of where I honed my skills and I learned until I wound up at PolyGram Records in 1989. And I created the first metal department for the label. And there, I guess, is kind of really where I kind of really learned the art of promotion. You know, everybody that was there at all, like, who were doing national along with me, all went on to become CEOs or vice president, general managers of major labels.
Wow.
You know, yeah, you know, like Brenda went off to be CEO at Interscope, and Joe went off to be VPGM at RCA, you know. So, I mean, a lot of talent really came out of, you know, that whole promotion department from the 1989 to early 90s era.
Did you have like a mentor, or like how did you, obviously it sounds like you had a lot of School of Hard Knocks and you were trial by fire. Did you have anybody that kind of took you under their wing to show you some mistakes to avoid or to send a path, or were you just grinding it?
Oh, yeah, I definitely had some people teaching me and mentoring me along the way. You know, obviously, you know, David Leach was one of those people, and, you know, Joe Riccatelli and Brenda and, you know, all of them kind of really taught me stuff that I know today. And even back at Combat Records, you know, Alan was everybody's boss. And he had said to me one day, all you have in this business is your reputation. Don't fuck it up, you know? So I kind of took those words of wisdom and said, okay, you know, you just don't go do stupid things, because when you do stupid things happen. Yeah. You know, so you know, that's where I kind of really built on that. But dude, you never stop learning.
Right.
You know, here it is. It's 30 years later. And every day I get into the office and I start doing something. I'm like, you know, why didn't I think of doing that 10 years ago? You know, I mean, things just come to you. You're like, how did I not see that? You know, so that's just the human nature in somebody. You know, as good as you can be at something, you never really see everything until sometimes after the fact.
True. Well, and one of the challenges of success is when something is working, you think that that's always going to work. So sometimes we could get hypnotized into a process that is still delivering some sort of results, and we may not veer off of that process. To your point, right? I'm sure it sounds like you have sometimes a delicate balance on, stay in your lane, like you know what works and stay focused. And then sometimes maybe it's like, oh, if I'd done that, it would have done this differently. But at the time, you were doing what worked.
Well, I mean, I kind of grew up with the philosophy of it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
Okay. And that came from my parents, and that came from my grandparents, and probably my great grandparents too. It ain't broke, leave it alone. It's fine.
Yeah.
So I've always had a philosophy that I kind of set my whole model up against. And, everything that we've done through that model always seems to work.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is, okay, it ain't broke. Don't fix it. Leave it alone.
Yep.
Now, I know better in some cases. I know what'll work and what won't work. And you kind of always have to change things up and swap it up and, mix a little something else into it to make it work. But for the most part, yeah, you kind of have to figure out that tender balance of how to approach something without messing it up. And if something is kind of in a mess, how not to mess it up even more, or if you're going to build on something, what not to do so that it doesn't become a mess.
Right. So
it happens pretty often, a lot in the music industry. Things kind of become a mess pretty quick,
Yeah, it's kind of the nature of the beast when you think about just the freneticness of the artistry, and then all the personalities, and then obviously the fans and what's going to get them on board, and it's you're essentially a psychologist in many ways, and like how can you present something to multiple angles, right? You've got the artist to deal with, the label to deal with, and then the end user, and they all have different needs, different wants, different everything, and that's you may or may not be conscious of how brilliant the gig you have is, and how brilliant you are to execute, because I'm sure there are plenty of what should I say, bodies on the side of the road in the industry who have not been able to make 30 years, which is insane. I mean, first of all, congratulations. That's groundbreaking. So you shared, like, you stayed in the metal rock thing. Did you ever veer off and find out the hard way that, maybe that's not going to square peg round hole?
Nah, I remember those kids from school. They give you a circle and a triangle, and you got to put it through the thing. You're like 3-4 years old in preschool, and some kids would pick up a hammer because it wouldn't fit into the thing.
We'll make it fit. Yep.
And they would make it fit. I was never kind of really one of those kids. You got to realize there's a lot of talent and a lot of people that came from labels and management companies and radio. And a lot of times, the success and the length of your career isn't so much by your talent and your ability to make stuff happen as much as being in the right place at the right time or the right position.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it from radio, at some point your station is going to get sold.
Right.
Okay. The station is going to flip formats, and it doesn't matter whether the station has stick or not. You're going to get sold. It's going to flip formats. A new PD comes in, a new consultant comes in, and what happens? He cleans house and he brings in all fresh blood. And you're going to get that everywhere, especially at rock radio, because it's a very young driven format. But you notice the people that have the most longevity in radio are the production guys and the engineers, because in production, all you have to do is know how to work a board and edit and put jingles together. And you could be 80 years old doing the gig for 50 years.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of cool, but, a lot of radio stations aren't going to put a 75-year-old guy on air unless he's been on air for 50 something years.
Right. Icon.
Like, you look at Scott Muni or, Carol Miller and some of the old New York jocks,
Is Fingers
they've been
still
on
doing
there
it?
in the market forever, and rightfully so. They're a staple mainstay. You don't want to take them off air.
Right. Is Fingers still on air?
Yeah, sure. Fingers does, he does 2 to 7 on BAB. Fingers Metal Shop is no more, unfortunately, but he does 2 to 7 Monday through Friday on BAB still. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And I spoke to him actually late in the week. Last week I spoke to him.
Man, that just total brings back memories. I lived on Fingers Metal Shop. That was badass. It's wow, memories. So here's an interesting thing, and I'd love to hear, share a little bit like what a day in the life of is, but it's changed. So you shared about how you knew, that label radio stations are going to flip formats, are going to get sold. I just think of WKRP and, how that whole thing, they went through some challenges. So people, to understand, I guess, kind of what that might look like. But then satellite came in. Did that change how you did your work, or did a lot of the guys that you had relationships with in terrestrial go to satellite? Did that have any impact in the way that you worked?
No, not at all. Actually, it in essence, it really helped us.
Oh, great.
Because the whole concept of satellite radio is brilliant. And especially HD radio. The only downside of HD is not every car has an HD stereo.
Right.
Okay. And if you remember back in the 90s when Sirius was just starting up, not everybody had a radio that was compatible with satellite either.
Yeah.
Now here it is 20 years later, every car has Sirius XM in it. Okay. Yeah, it's come standard. And I think in another few years, every stereo that you buy is going to come standard with an HD channel.
Yep.
And the beauty of HD is that when you stop and you look at, a lot of stations, like let's say KLBJ in Austin, No Control is the metal show. And it's a few hours, but they also have an HD channel, which runs 24/7, all metal in the market. And it's beautiful because now you can get up to 30 spins a week on your record there. The downside is you just don't have the market queue because not everyone has an HD radio,
right?
But I think that's going to wind up changing. Terrestrial will never go away. There's always going to be a need for being able to turn on a radio and listening to, an FM or an AM feed in a market. You're always going to need that.
Right.
Not to mention that there's a lot of talent out there and there's a lot of good metal shows and alternative shows and other formats at specialty that are out there. So you're always going to need that, that end play, as you might want to put it, to find the niche for what it is you want to listen to. But satellite definitely helped us in a big way because it really helped us break a lot of bands, and especially with Ginger,
So based on like everything that the accessibility, has there been any change in the taste for metal?
Oh yeah, well, dude, the format's changed drastically ever since like the 1980s.
Right.
You don't see hair bands anymore, and you're not really seeing any grunge bands anymore. The one thing that never changes with metal is that when it comes to old school traditional metal, whether it's power metal or old school thrash or just good old fashioned hard rock bands, it's still the same. It's just a newer style, different people, different songs, and different everything. And in some cases, the production's a lot better, because, some of them really learn to program in Pro Tools. And, all they have to do is go somewhere and mix and then master. And what would have cost like $50,000 to make a record, 30 years ago, now just costs you $5,000. It's beautiful.
Well, and also, I dealt with that directly. That was kind of I saw the writing on the wall for what I was doing as a producer. The first record we had, I think it was close to 200,000 as the budget, which was pretty low at that time. Then they got dropped, and this is what Pro Tools was out and stuff, but it hadn't blown up entirely. they got dropped, and then the manager went back, was like, no, give us another shot, and like, tell you what, we'll give you 50 grand, buy a Pro Tools rig, and just make as many songs as you want, and then bring us a record when you're done. Don't hire Doug, don't do any of that, just do it yourself. And savvy artists loved it. Because they're like, I could just wake up, I'm inspired. They were really talented. So to your point, I think it opened up a lot of new ways for people to be creative, because they didn't need an engineer to be sitting there cutting tape or, throwing all the big mics and, all of that. They really were able to do it in the box. And now, as you know, I'm sure you've heard the stories of people doing the tracks at their house, the drum tracks, sending it over to the next guy, and then they lay down the tracks at their house, and then the record is done, and they were never in the room together.
Yeah, dude, that happens pretty often.
Yeah.
And a lot of our roster, when they get a guest appearance, once they have everything, they make a copy of the hard drive, and they send the hard drive out.
Yeah.
They go in the studio, they knock it out wherever it is, make it, back it up, and then send it back to them.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of digital. It's easy, very easy.
And now it sounds good, because I think at first it wasn't quite as good as it is today.
Oh, no, not at all. Dude, I remember back in the day, digital was just coming up, and it was such a nightmare to work with.
Yep.
Because nobody really, fathomed how the system worked. But once you figure it out, it's that simple. It's really easy.
Yep. So walk us like a day in the life of, like, actually two questions. One, first of all, skateboard marketing, where did that come from?
Okay. I had just started the company, and I didn't have a name, and I was on the phone with one of my stations. It was actually Chris Payne from KZRQ in Reno. I was like, dude, I don't know, man. I got to come up with a name for the company. And he's like, yeah, we'll figure it out. He goes, I'll skitch to New York on my skate deck, and like, we'll go get drunk and we'll figure something out, blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right, cool. I hung up the phone. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Skateboard marketing. I'll probably get skate punks thinking I sell trucks, wheels, and decks, but that's all right,
Yeah.
And I do still get a lot of hits to our website from fans that think we're a skateboard company and have nothing to do with skateboards,
Wow,
and that's kind of how the name came about. So it's stuck. I filed for a trademark. I drafted my logo and sent it out to copyright the artwork, and filed for charter, and lo and behold, I became a corporation.
Boom.
And there it is.
I love it.
$500 later.
Yeah. Brilliant. So first, like, let's share like a day in the life. Like, what is your, like, the gig? Because I think there might be a lot of people, like you shared, like, they think it's easy, just pick up the phone. Like, what is your goal? Like, when you wake up and you've got a band, like, who hires you? And then what is your goal, and how do you know you've succeeded?
Well, it's a lot more than just picking up the phone and calling stations. I mentioned earlier, you need relationships.
Yep.
And without relationships, you really don't have anything. Or the company kind of has to have a name, to itself, with some notoriety, or just somebody within that company that has credibility, where that you can come in and pick up the phone and start to, like, get your feet wet, but you're still going to need to build your relationships. But the one main thing is, it's not just picking up the phone. You got to remember, you have to prep audio files. The one main thing is you have to make sure there's an ISRC code on every audio file that goes out, so that you can track your spins at digital. Metadata's got to be on everything. So everything's got to be prepped the right way.
And that's all you have to do, because it's coming from your efforts.
Well, yes and no. A lot of times we'll get audio files straight from mastering.
Okay.
They get delivered to A&R. The band delivers the record. Then, promotion or marketing or publicity will send me the record, and I'll get everything. And there's no metadata or codes on it, because they didn't get into putting them in yet, So by the time they get to the distributor end, everything's done. But I'm getting stuff 2-3 months beforehand, So it's really before they, that they're prepped and ready to go. So we have to deal with that. Then obviously there's trade setup, there's media base and BDS encoding that has to get done. And then there's your setup, coming up with the setup and getting on the phone and following through with however you want to do it, whether
you muted.
Whether or not you want to, say, okay, we're not going to do a premiere, but we're going to give it to this cat first so that he can play it, at 9 a.m. And then we're going to service the track at 9:30, Or if it's something where everybody knows the track is coming out and as part of the setup, you do a Q&A and you have a station and a writer kind of host a Q&A thing and you premiere something that way,
So you're arranging that with the band? So you're saying the Q&A, you'll get the band and say, hey, go on such and such a station to talk about the record?
Yeah, it would be a joint effort between us, publicity and marketing and digital and everybody at the label. So it's a whole team effort. It's not just one guy.
Right. So, when a record's coming out, you're getting on a conference call with everybody and you're putting together like a business plan?
Always. We have to have a conference call. We have to have a setup. We need to get a timeline together. Once we have all that in place and we know what we're going to do, it makes the job so much easier. And then obviously when the tour comes and there's a tour announcement, then, it's obviously we need to schedule phoners. There's guest lists. There's, in-person interviews, there's stage announcements if we want to, if the band's the headliner, obviously the venue and the band as the headliner have final say in who can do a stage announcement, whether there will be or there won't be.
Yeah.
It's up to the band actually. And, and that's pretty much it. There's a lot of small details. It's very detailed and you just have to focus on it. So it's kind of not one of those jobs that you can just say, go out and drink all night and party like a rock star and show up and do the gig,
Well, it seems like, oftentimes, like to your point, there's that, you ever see those memes where it's like, what my friends think I do, what the bands think I do, what my parents think I do, right? And it's all like glamorous or whatever. And then it's like what I really do. And it sounds like what you're really doing is you're making connections, but you're like getting really granular on like arranging. It's like a jigsaw puzzle that you're putting together like on the fly.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you have to, it's definitely something where when I get in the morning, I have to be on point, I just can't walk in here and be a mess and actually get anything done. It becomes the most unproductive day for me,
How many projects can you work on at one time?
How many projects?
Yeah, or how many bands, how many releases, like what's your...
I mean, usually we take about 6 or 7 or 8, and then we always get a few that are just servicings. The label or management will hire us just to throw it out there. And if somebody wants an interview or needs something, take care of it. And I could take 20 of those all day, every day, because there's really not a lot of time or effort that has to go into it,
Right.
It's just servicing it and getting it out there. So I've always liked to focus on about 7 or so, 8 at the most every month, because that's a good number where I can deliver and get results. And anything over that, it starts getting a little tacky and hairy.
Right. So when, to put a timestamp on this as well is when COVID and lockdowns and, shows and, stopped going and all of that, how did that impact you? Did it? And were you, what did you do about it?
Well, it didn't slow us down at all. We actually got busier because bands were home. They had nothing to do. And at that point, what's there to do except release singles to keep streaming numbers up?
Right.
So we were throwing a lot of singles out on, radio samplers just to keep streaming numbers moving, Then bands started doing the live streams, and if they were in Europe, it was like €5 or €10, and you got a live stream, so that's how a lot of artists survived during that. But radio and press and digital actually got busier. I just feel really bad for security and event staff and venues, all the way down to catering and the tour bus. And, the girl that shows up who is the massage therapist backstage at every show.
Yep.
I mean, that's their bread and butter. And for the last year and a half, everyone's been sitting home, not being able to do anything.
Yeah.
And, and it's kind of frustrating. I think that they really didn't need to shut everything down. I just think they really needed to take a little more precaution in what you had to do and how you had to do it. That's really all I think, and we would have been fine.
Kind of like the way you take on a project. You kind of have all this information that comes in. You have these challenges that you have. You think through it. You go, okay, let me look at what are the consequences of this? What are the consequences of that? What can I put in place should that happen? And then you just think it through, and then you succeed. Prepare.
I've done pretty well with it. I guess maybe I have a knack for it. I don't really know. I mean, that's just what we do.
Yeah.
And when you have the knack for something, it's cool. But
you also see it. It's a curse because you see when it's not being done.
Oh, dude. Believe me, I've kicked myself in the ass numerous times. I'm like, how did I not see that? How did that happen? No, this can't be.
Right.
And there's sometimes I know something's going to work and it just doesn't work. And not every record is going to react. You just have to figure out what chemistry works, because there's no science to making something work. It's not like, in chemistry class, there's a catalyst that you can do for this, or there's something you can put into that, which is going to make this happen. And it'll always work because physics says it will. And chemistry says it will.
Right.
Doesn't really work that way, and it kind of sometimes it gets pretty frustrating.
I know. So, was there ever a record that you heard and it came, like when you got it, you were like, "This is insane! Holy crap! It's gonna blow up!" And it didn't. And then, has there ever been a time where you got something and you were like, "This is crap," and it blew up?
Yeah. It's happened quite a few times. I don't want to mention artist names, but yeah, it's happened pretty often, and it will continue to happen. That's just part of the gig. It's one of the things you have to accept in your career, that you're going to get stuff you think that you envision is going to be amazing, and nothing happens. And then you get a record like, I don't think that's going to do anything. You throw it out there and it blows up.
Yeah. I'll share a story since it's not one of your artists or anything, but it was a funny thing. Do you know Shane Keister? Do you remember Shane? He's a country guy. He played with Elvis. He's played on like every major record. And he goes, I just sometimes I can't pick them. He goes, I remember I was on this gig, and I played, did all these songs, and there's this one song, it was Kenny Rogers, and he's like, this one song we came out, and I said to Paul, the drummer, I was like, dude, I don't get this song at all. I don't get it. And the drummer's like, dude, this is a hit. And he's like, I don't know, it's just something, I just don't get it. It was Lucille.
Wow.
So, like, you never know what mood you're in or how something hits you as well at that time, right? So, again, like that chemistry, there's so many other things at play that, the great news is that doesn't affect you. Like, you don't, I'm going to hallucinate, your passion is about the work, that you don't hear a song or, give extra favor because you think that it's going to be huge. You do what you do because you're a professional, and then how it works out, you get to celebrate or be confused if it doesn't do what you think it's going to do.
Yeah, I celebrate a lot and I get confused a lot. That's just nature. That's just the nature of the beast, And you just learn to live with it, and you learn to take it as a grain of salt. And once you kind of teach yourself, okay, this is what's going to happen, and you know how to handle and how to deal with it, the gig becomes so much easier.
So what do you do, like, if you're having a bad day or a bad moment, or something doesn't go the way you hoped or had planned, because there's a lot of moving parts that you've got moving. How do you adjust? What is like something you do to get yourself, as you shared, to get refocused?
Ironically, my personality, I'm always focused. It's just my personality. But if there's a firestorm and everything just becomes an absolute mess, I'm like, okay, it's been happening like this for the last 5 hours. This is insane. I'll light a cigarette and I'll walk around the block a couple of times. And I come right back in the office, make a cup of coffee, and sit right back down at my desk and handle it and get it done to the best that I can. I've never really had a problem with with dealing with the stress or dealing with a firestorm. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a firestorm with every job, every line of work that you do. It's going to be there.
So the two things that I'm hearing and want to just point it out to help people also deal with, because like you shared, they're always going to come. So what you do is you essentially change your state. You remove yourself from whatever that firestorm is for a moment. Do what you need to do. When you're smoking, you're actually changing your physiology. You come back in, you grab a cup of coffee, you just get recentered, and then boom, you don't go, the world is over, woe is me. You don't just scream and cry and complain about, how things should be the way you want them. You just acknowledge the way they are, step back, and then take action.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, you can't panic, and I mean, if you look at emergency service, it's the same thing. A fireman goes into a burning building and there's a structural malfunction. You can't panic. You have to know how to handle that situation.
Yep.
The police department, a guy's robbing a bank and he comes out and they start shooting at each other. You have to be trained to know how to deal with that situation. It's the same thing in every line of work.
Yep.
You just learn and teach yourself how to focus and how to take care of that. And it's not very hard, It's not hard at all, I mean, I've had some pretty bad firestorms in the last 35 years. And I'll tell you, that's the thing that works the best for me. I'm like, all right, this is an absolute mess. I'm going to go smoke a cigarette, walk around the block. I come back in, I sit down, look at everything without anything in front of me and handle it. And it gets done.
Love it. So when it came to, you shared about, you're putting in the QR, the codes and all of that stuff. Did technology, created such interesting challenges in the production side, for you in the marketing side, did you have any obstacles or did you have to re-educate yourself on technology? And did you see anyone not adapt to what the new technology was offering?
Yeah, I mean, technology is constantly changing. If you stop and you look at, obviously, audio and engineering, you remember back in the day, you had a Harris console or a Neve and a 2-inch high-back Studer, and everything was analog.
Yep.
And then along came
everything in and write everything down. Yeah.
And then along came SMPTE time code, and then you were able to do 48 track by syncing up 2 tape machines.
Yep.
And you were able to you were buying automated consoles, so, I mean, everyone's gets intimidated by it, but there's nothing to be intimidated by. It's that simple. If you don't know, you learn. That's all you do. Digital is pretty much the same concept. Instead of putting in a CD or a cassette or an album on a turntable, you're opening a file, you're double clicking on it, you're playing it with Winamp, and it's a WAV file.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you're doing. It's an MP3 file. You look at it, there's no data. Well, all right, we have to put the metadata in. You have to say the name of the band and what the album is and the name of the track, and put all the info in. In a lot of cases, it's there when I get it, but a lot of cases it's not, And then if I send it to radio, radio guys, especially college stations, they're going to download stuff. It's going to be all over their desktop. It's going to be a mess. And then they're like, oh, I had that. What is it? Is this it? Is that it? And they're going to go clicking on files, and they're not going to know what it is because there's no metadata.
So,
and you need that too for media base.
Yeah.
And you also need that for digital, whether it's Apple Music or Spotify or any streaming service. The code has to be there so that we know what the spin detections are and we have actual spin counts because the radio charts are put together by spins.
When streaming just came out, what was your relationship with that? What did you think about it? You know, with the iPod and then the streaming services. Was there any fear? Obviously, some of the artists are not as happy as they'd like to be because they're not getting paid as much through the streaming. When it first started coming out, what was your thought about it?
Well, I mean, if we're going to go back to like the early days of file sharing, no, I mean, I think as the industry as a whole should have gotten together and did something about that, because it really hurt the entire industry.
Yeah.
And a lot of people really think, they're going to stop and look at Metallica for going after Napster. And, I completely agreed with Lars on that whole concept because, think about it. It costs a lot of money to keep the machine oiled, okay? Yeah. You got payroll, you got utilities, you got manufacturing costs, you got T&E, okay? You have artist expenditures, you have tour support, and that money's got to come from somewhere. Where does it come from? Selling records, So, that really put a damper in what we did. And then when streaming became pretty predominant, I think it's a great idea. The concept's brilliant. I love it. The only thing is, obviously the Trump administration signed into law that, they had to raise the royalty rate because I know record companies were lobbying for that forever. But I guess Congress never set the rate. And I don't really know the protocol on how you have to go about, Congress has to go about doing that. But, it's already signed into law. I guess nobody figured out well, what are we going to make the new royalty rate so everybody can actually get paid for their work?
Right.
So I'm confident that eventually they'll work it out, and that we will have everybody's going to get paid a little bit more, because mechanicals is still king of the hill.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what advice, or what are you seeing also with the fact that the cool thing about the technology, it's now you can create kind of your cult following. You could not be signed now and be able to get your music out the way you never could 20, 30 years ago. How, have you ever been approached by an independent who wasn't signed and they were like, hey, Munsey, can you get me on the radio to start, promoting?
Yeah, I get hired by the artists a lot. And even back when I first started the company, we got hired by the artists pretty often. It would come from the label, management. In some cases, the band's agent called and hired us, and, we've had, guys that were in bands where their parents just had money and said, okay, we're going to pay for this. I said, okay, it makes sense, or okay, it doesn't make sense. Leave your money in the bank. You have to stop and weigh the option of, is it really worth it to spend and allocate a budget on something if all you're going to get is this? Okay. So hypothetically, I don't really care who it is that's hiring us. It's everyone that's hiring us, but it's an independent artist marketplace right now.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Because when I was 17, we didn't have any of it. If you weren't signed and you didn't have 30 or 40 grand in the bank, you weren't making a record, you weren't going anywhere until you got signed. Yeah. And a lot of bands back then, well, why did I sign everything away? Well, you see what it costs to do it, and the record didn't do anything. Somebody lost a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's and also one of the things that I notice, I think for, your experience has been really kind of special and cool, because you've been at labels at different size. So some of these giant labels, these behemoths, don't have the same flexibility, and they have a real difficult time bringing a band from zero to hero, whereas the smaller labels have more passion, they have more, they seem to be more nimble, and they're doing more co-oping and bringing bands together and creating those amazing opportunities. Is that still the case? I mean,
Yeah, and dude, nothing has changed in that aspect from from independent artists. We still see a lot of small bands make their own record. And one fine example of that was the band Nothing Face. I know you remember those guys. They hired us for their EP, then they hired us for the album, and they did everything completely independent. And they did have a manager who helped finance everything. And lo and behold, they got picked up by TBT Records.
Yep.
And there you go. Then obviously, Tom Maxwell went off to play with Hell Yeah with, Vinnie Paul.
Yep.
So, that band generated a lot of talent. And it's just one of the things that you look at as an independent artist who did it on their own and then got signed by a big label and became something. So it happens all the time.
So what advice would you have for a band starting out that is wanting to create that type of experience?
Well, my first suggestion is take your time making a record. If you take your time making a record and then you put it together, at the end of the process, you're going to be a lot happier when you wrap everything up and it gets mastered. You're going to sit back and listen to it and say, wow, this is good. So some guys can go in a studio and knock out a record in 3 or 4 weeks, Some guys, it takes 3 or 4 months. Yep. Doesn't matter if it takes 3 or 4 months or 3 or 4 weeks. Take your time making a record and get it right the first time.
Yep.
And obviously don't take opinion from just like guys that you meet sitting out at a show somewhere, because there's probably a reason why their band made 5 records and they didn't go anywhere,
Yep. Don't take advice from financial advice from a broke person.
Yeah. So, exactly. Or asking one of your unemployed friends to buy you drinks and then ask them for advice,
right,
Yeah. So, if you really need the straight up advice, go to somebody that actually knows. If you're a guitar player, oh, dude, talk to Alex Skolnick, talk to Gary in Exodus, talk to somebody that has made records for years and actually knows what they're talking about. If you're a bass player, talk to David Ellison. Talk to a pro who's actually done it, not the guy who's unemployed buying people drinks at a bar, because those are the guys that are the worst.
Yeah.
They'll make you crazy.
And would you say that some of those guys are accessible, that you could reach out to them? And what advice would you have for someone who wants to reach out to, because I'm a huge, I agree with that 100%. I mean, that's how I was able to succeed. And everything I've done is by surrounding myself and being willing, because I know they're accessible. Has your experience been, some people are going to say no or not yet or what have you. That doesn't mean you just go, oh, that's it, I'm not going to meet that person or talk to them. What advice would you have for someone who wants to meet someone to get advice from them, who's successful and has what you want?
A lot of those guys teach at the School of Rock from wherever it is that they are. A lot of them do give lessons too, and, I know it sounds crazy. They're like, oh, really? Like Jeff Plate, from Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Metal Church, Sabotage, he gives drum lessons.
Yep.
And he, he's not insulted at all at the fact, because he's an accomplished drummer. That's his craft, and he is just good at what he does. So he gives lessons. And if you're going to learn how to play drums, well, that's the kind of guy you want to learn how to play drums from.
Yep.
A guy who's made records and toured the world, because you're going to get the real advice, the real facts, and the real example of how it is. Okay. Compared to somebody that, hey, I'm not saying somebody's a bad musician, but you just want to learn from somebody that's been there. That's who you want to learn from.
Well, and also what you're going to learn is kind of what we're getting, kind of sharing and is the mindset. Because it's more than just talent, right? It's also understanding how important, like you shared, having the relationships. It's not just making calls; it's building relationships, not burning bridges. It's being flexible yet focused. It's all of those other things where some people, like, they may watch you, and right now I'm sure you make it. You probably for the last 20 years you've made what you do look easy. Because you've put in the time, you've got the sweat equity, you've got all of that, and the only reason why it looks easy is because you've been doing it for so long.
Oh, I mean, dude, listen to Alex Skolnick shred on guitar, okay? Listen to David Ellefson shred on bass. Go listen to Chuck Billy. He's pushing 60. Listen to him shred on vocals. Yeah, they make it sound easy, but there's a little talent that goes along with it. There's a little bit of know-how that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of factors. I mean, you just have to take your time with it and learn. And it just comes. After a while, it just comes and it becomes natural. And it becomes second nature. That's how you learn.
Yep. And the cool
believe
thing,
me, none of us are going to stop learning. Me and you will be 70 years old, and we're still going to be learning new stuff every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once the three worst words that we could ever utter in the English language to form a sentence that will stop us dead in our tracks, I know that. Once we say that, screwed.
Now that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
Dead in the water. And the cool thing about like School of Rock and Meat Hook and all these other opportunities is, yeah, you hire them for some lessons and you get that. You also just get that, those quick moments, like to ask a question and, just build that relationship. And the truth is truly successful people love helping other people succeed.
Absolutely. Well, that's really what it comes to. And that's what it's all about. I mean, if you don't take the time to realize it's not all about me, this gig that we do is all about your client base. Mm-hmm. It's about the bands you represent, your whole roster. It's about the record companies and management and the band's agent, and everything all the way down to, the girl working the ticket window at a venue. Because if there's not radio or press support in a market, well, then maybe the show may not sell.
Yep.
So we all have to kind of jump in and work hand in hand to make something happen. And the beauty of a lot of the fresh blood coming in is that you can always tell somebody with talent. They always have an idea.
Yep.
They always can hey, I got an idea. Let's do this. Let's do that. I'm like, no, that is definitely not going to work. Well, why didn't I think of that?
Right.
Yep. So it's be one of two things. So it's, it's always a good thing, to look at the perspective from somebody coming in,
Yeah. What's something that a crazy thing that someone asked you to do that when they told you that you were like, that is nuts. And you did it and it worked. Was there something, you don't have to mention the band necessarily, but was there a particular thing that you remember man, when we did that, I thought that was, we were kind of taking a chance, but it was brilliant.
Yeah, I've had a few of those that have come along. The band really wants to do this. I'm like, that is utterly insane. Okay, if that's what you want to do, that's what we're going to do. Okay, and then we do it, and all of a sudden we're like, wow, look at that, it actually happened.
So, what would be an example of something like that you would think is insane that someone would suggest?
All right, we had one artist that we worked. Now this isn't uncommon, and personally, I think it's insane, but keep releasing singles all the way up until Street Date, with the exception of one track, all right? And then on Street Date, release the last track. To me, that is absolutely insane and complete insanity, because you kill your first week sales.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Everybody's heard the record for 3 or 4 months leading up into Street Date, Now, I kind of always suggest not doing it, but in a couple of cases, management insisted on doing it. We said, okay, and we did. And it actually did work in 1 or 2 cases. And in many other cases, it didn't work. And it was the same thing as I figured. First week sales on SoundScan were they did what? Oh, it was double digits. That's it. Double digits as in 10 or 11.
Right.
Instead of seeing 12,000.
Right. So you bring up another great point, and this may or may not have contributed to some of the challenges and demise of some of the way things were done back in the 90s and the early 2000s. it got to a point where it's almost like the record would have like 2 singles. Like where, we had gotten to the point where there were some records where like almost every song was like a huge hit or at least awesome. And then it got to a point where it just felt like, okay, they gotta, it's like they hired a songwriter to help them write this, 1 or 2 cool single, and then the rest of the record was not as good. Is that still happening? Did you notice that as a pattern back then? Now that's a little more probably pop music than metal, but same.
Yeah, you really, in metal, I mean, you don't really get a lot of that in metal. You do have people come in, but when they bring in a guest appearance, they're going to bring in a guest appearance of, hey, let's get somebody good. You know what? I think Ted from Death Angel would be ideal for this. Let's ask Ted if he wants to do this.
Right.
And you get a guest appearance. And in that point, now you have a new artist that doesn't really have that national or global notoriety yet. They're working on their debut record, and they have somebody of notoriety on the record.
That's huge. Yeah, you borrow the family.
So it kind of gives the band some credibility. And, obviously a lot of well-known artists sometimes don't like doing it because it depends on the band.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of bands will ask you, but, listen to, if they're going to listen to the tracks and be like, I don't like it. I don't want to do it,
Have you ever orchestrated any of those kind of situations? Have you ever, put together a super group or reached out and said, hey, it would be really cool if, we brought so-and-so on?
Nah, I mean, it's always been a long-standing point in the industry not to interfere with a band making a record or what they want to do when it comes to picking band members. Let the band make a record, let them deliver a record, and then if the late record company picks up on the option, then it comes to us and we'll go to work.
Okay.
I don't want to be that guy that say, our radio promo guy told us to do that,
Okay.
And then when something becomes another mess, they're like, our radio promo guy told us to do that, and then you look like a schnook,
Keep clean. No, and I think this is all instructive because you're demonstrating, again, your philosophy of staying focused and doing what you know best and delivering so you could be consistent. And, that's what people need is that trust. They can trust you. They know that you obviously know what you're doing. And they also trust that you're not going to get out of your lane, that you're going to just, be a master at your craft without trying to, juggle something while you're also, shooting yourself out of the cannonball.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So,
well, that's how you stay focused in a gig. But, it's not only me. That's kind of an industry standpoint. So if you see somebody step in, the only person that should really step in and tell a band, or direct a band or try to focus them on something is their manager.
Mm-hmm.
That's what management is there for. Let the band make a record, and, if something's wrong, he can guide in on it,
Totally. So when is your book coming out? Or have you already written one?
Nah, you know what, dude? I haven't even thought about writing one. I really should, shouldn't I?
I'm sure you have some amazing insights to share and incredible stories that would be, really powerful. Because people are hungry for like a pathway to success, to growth, to understanding, and also they always want to kind of get in like under the hood, right? And it's always nice if you can drop some names, but even still your name. So like you're sharing like, look, here's what I did, and here's some of the stories, some of the adventures that we went on. And then obviously, if there's some records that people go, wow, that's how that happened. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was huge. Whoa, like it really it could infuse a lot of energy into some fresh blood.
Yeah, I should actually look at possibly writing a book one day. I'd like to do that. But it's, the other concept is, where am I getting the time? 60 hours a week in the office.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. When I have me time, I'd rather be sitting on my couch, okay? Or go out and take my motorcycle out and go do something, or, you know, whatever, because at night, obviously you have a lot of shows at night. And if everything goes as planned by July, we're going to be back into full swing and touring.
Yep.
Which I can't wait for. We so need it right now.
Gosh, are bands starting to play? Because I know it's a completely different sector, but Jimmy Buffett is playing down here in Del Rey at Old School Square. 4 nights, sold out in 2 minutes. And then someone sold a pod. They're selling pods. So the way they're doing it is they're doing like little 4-seat things. Holds like 800 people. It's outside. Someone bought one and then sold a 4-seat pod for $12,000.
Wow.
People are hungry to get out again.
Dude, I'm telling you, by the middle of this summer, end of the summer, it's going to be like the Roaring 20s. I remember watching all the video footage on the History Channel, the Roaring 20s, when Prohibition was over.
Yep.
Dude, it's going to take 2 or 3 years for everyone to get their yayas out and just let's do this,
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting. I mean, I'm really praying for the bands who have and artists who've been able to stay together, stay focused, and all that, so they could just come out and like we do it obviously in a way that doesn't cause fear. And again, to go down that rabbit hole, Florida. We're having the events. We've been open this whole time, so we have proof of concept. So I really hope that that continues. I think that people are hungry. They need it. I mean, it's been bananas. I'm sure the people you're talking to are freaking out.
Yeah, it's going to happen. And I've said this, and a lot of people have said this. You didn't need to shut down venues and everything. We would have been fine.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of problems with H1N1 and the SARS virus, but they didn't shut everything down. People were just a little more careful, and that's all you had to be. And I think, now we're probably going to see like an explosion in live entertainment. It's going to be to the point of, I don't think anybody can afford to go to every show.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see what kind of price points, because everyone's been hurting. So what kind of ramp up are they going to be able to do to get back flush again? Because these venues have been losing money.
Well, I mean, the one thing I think that's really stopped a lot of touring is you can't put a national act in a venue like, let's say it's the Bowery Ballroom,
right,
or Irving Plaza, or even the Gramercy. You can't do those at 25% or 50% cap with a national touring act.
Yeah,
you're going to go broke before you even turn the lights on.
Yep. Or you got to charge like $5,000 a ticket.
Yeah, you're going to be charging $150, $200 a ticket. Okay, and it's just not cost efficient.
Yep.
Fans aren't going to buy tickets. You're going to take a bath, and it's just going to suck. So they really need is 100% capacity, and at 100% capacity, then you at least have the option where, all right, we only sold 300 tickets. We're going to take a hit, or hey, we sold 1,500. We just sold out. Beautiful. Yeah,
I think it's going to be a lot more selling out than not, because it's well needed. So when that all happens, will that be like another growth spurt for skateboard marketing? Like, will you expand to help? Like, how big is your organization now? How many people is in, kind of on?
Well, we have 2 people. Actually, I have 3. I have 2 on staff, and I have an intern. But when that all happens, it'll stay the same.
Okay.
The one thing I learned is when things get busy and you grow, eventually things will not be as busy and you have to downsize. So when the roller coaster is up, it just means you're out insanely busy. When the roller coaster goes down, you have a little breathing room, and that goes both ways, financially and workload. So if it was to the point of we expanded and had more stuff, like we have Metal Contraband now, but I had to bring somebody in to oversee a lot of that because I can't do it all myself.
Right. So what do you see the future of skateboard marketing? Are you do you have a person who is gonna one day take it over, or is like what's the?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm not going to be doing this forever. At some point in my career, I'm going to be. I've had enough, and I need to throw the towel in.
Right.
You know, I want to sit down and relax a little bit. You know, that day is going to come, and
well, that's when you write your book.
You know, maybe that's when I'll write my book. You know, and then maybe at that point I'll look at somebody taking the company over. You know.
But it's not something that's in your like you don't have an exit strategy already planned.
Nah, I mean, dude, I'm going to be here for at least another 15, 20 years before I get ready to retire. You know, so I got some time to really think about it, you know.
Totally. So where do you see the industry going? Do you see any like shifts, anything that you think is going to happen in the industry that is any changes based on either technology or desire or the way things are delivered?
Yeah, I see probably within the next 5 years, downsizing becoming a major concept. I mean, when I worked for a major label, it was colossal. We had like 5, 6 floors,
right?
You know, I mean, legal affairs had their own floor, you know,
yep.
And, you know, it was insane, you know, and accounting had like half of the floor on one half of the side with like 25 people. You know, you're not really, you know, that's all gotten to the point of that's just become prehistoric.
Right.
You know, of having that many people doing that many things. You know, everyone's going to start downsizing. We're already seeing it. It's getting smaller and smaller, where you even go up to some of the majors now, and instead of 8 floors, you have 3 floors, you know, and everybody's consolidated on 3. And then in other cases, people are working from home.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked from home since day one with this company. And I do kind of miss going into an office. I love commuting, you know. Well, I shouldn't say I love commuting. I like going into the office and interacting with people. I like to be around people,
right?
You know. But you know, we're going to see a lot of people working from home. We're going to see a lot of people working remotely, and everything's going to consolidate and get a lot smaller than it already is.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to, we talked a little bit about AD, you know, Roundtree, and he's doing all his broadcasts from his house. And he's like, I don't want to go into the studio. I don't need to go into the studio. Why would I do that? Everything I need is right here, and I just send everything in. So, you know, pros and cons to all of that, of course, you know, depending on also how hard you're working.
Well, you know, Fingers does that at BAB, Voice Tracks at Home.
Yep.
You know, Chelsea, who works in my office, she works at BAB, and she does traffic. She voice tracks at home and sends it in.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're still going to need the air studio.
Right.
But in a lot of cases, you're not going to need the colossal building that you had with 30, 40, or 50 people in it.
Yep.
You know, you're going to get a smaller space that's a quarter of the price. You know, you'll have a conference room. You'll have a couple of offices and a couple of air studios and an editing room. And, you know, there it is. That's all you need.
Yep. And what's interesting, you know, when you talk about the labels, you know, there was that curve, right? So there was a bunch of the big labels, and then they just started buying all the smaller labels, right? And then they got just so big, and now it's starting to implode, or it's been imploding, where like, oh, you know, maybe we didn't need to have all of that.
No, not at all. That's what happens when you grow too fast, too soon.
Yep.
You know, it's always good to grow very slowly, because as after a while you get to a certain point, you start to realize, man, I'm happy I didn't do that. You know, I'm happy I didn't get office space numerous times when the roller coaster went down, and I stayed at home.
Yep.
You know, so, you know, really in a nutshell, I mean, growing is good, but also growing too much and being too big is not good.
Well, yeah, it's the geometric growth as opposed to just rocket growth, right? So you're holistic. Very, very Solomon of you. You know the story of Solomon and the ring?
No, I don't.
So Solomon, he was, this may have been Solomon or not, but he, very wise man, or well, no, it wasn't Solomon. It was this king. It was like Merlin. It was the jester. So he goes to his jester, and he's like, I need something that is going to, remind me that, that it's going to be okay. Like when things get really bad, I need it to kind of give me some confidence and certainty. But I also need something that, keeps me grounded. So when things are going really well, that I don't kind of lose myself in all of that hype. I need to stay balanced. And so the wizard came back and hands him a ring that just has one simple sentence: "This too shall pass."
Wow.
So
that's right.
Yeah. So things are gonna have the firestorm. It'll pass. We're also gonna have some huge wins, and those are also going to pass. And it's being able to ride that coaster and enjoy it, but also know that I'm also gathering from you, which is instructive, I think, that your relationship with the firestorm isn't that you feel like, this shouldn't happen or whatever. You just know it's coming, and it's part of the fun in its own way. Not to say that you're kind of going, let's have a firestorm, let's have these things go crazy, but you're also, knowing that it's going to happen, so you don't get necessarily resentful or angry. You just deal with it, and then you get to look back and go, wow, that was effed up. Like, but look, we did it. And you have that sense of accomplishment.
Well, James Hetfield said it all. Ride the lightning.
Yeah. Love
it. Ride the lightning. The wave is going. Ride the lightning.
Yep.
The roller coaster went down. That's okay. You got a lifeboat. You'll be fine. It's going to go back up again.
Yep.
The thunderstorm's coming, and you're going to ride the lightning again, and things are going to be fine.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, I'm so glad that, you also were able to help so many bands and artists during this challenging time, because I'm sure for them, they were freaking out. So you were able to give them a bolt of lightning to ride in a very uncertain time, which is huge, and definitely appreciate it. And any final words? I want to respect our time here, and it's getting late. Any final words of advice? Anything that you would have liked to have learned? Like, was there something that maybe advice that maybe you were given and you didn't take, and you look back and go, now I see what they mean? Or is there any advice you would have given a younger Munsey?
Yeah. Any advice I would have gave to myself, though? I mean, the one thing I learned at major label, every major label, the politics kind of get a little bit thick, and, when I had first started, I was straight out of college radio. Very opinionated. I'm 24 years old. I'd rather go out and drink and get in a circle pit than play politics. Right. I wanted to do my gig. But one thing you do have to learn is, there's a certain way of the way things are done, and there's a reason why things are in place that way. Okay. So just, if you don't get over aggressive and you take your time to really learn the real reason why things are that way, obviously, if you look at rappers, don't condemn the player, condemn the game.
Yep.
You take your time, and your agility to learn that, and then guide your way through and kind of navigate the landscape is probably going to be the most essential thing you're going to learn in your career. It'll make you a lot more effective, and you'll have a much longer career.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's I guess people skills.
Yeah, people skills. You have to be a people person.
Yeah.
And you have to be a little smart enough to figure something out.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you were that smart where we can figure it out yet, but whatever, it's fine.
I think what we both have also learned is that if we don't know, we could find someone to ask and have no shame in that. Like, just say, hey, just curious.
I have no shame in asking somebody something I don't know.
Yeah.
No big deal.
To think that anybody would know everything is insane. So I think that, and, and here's a little shift around that for anyone who struggles with this. Have you ever given advice and felt really good that someone asked you a question and you were able to help, share some of your wisdom?
Yeah, actually, I have.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask you, like, hey, how do I deal with this? How do we get through this situation? This is a mess. And I just say, hey, this is what I would do.
Yep.
But this is me.
Right. And
I'm not you, and somebody else will have a different opinion.
Of course, but you enjoy sharing it. Like you like knowing that. Yeah. So my suggestion to anyone whoever worries that they don't want to ask a question or look stupid is you're denying a gift to someone who would appreciate the opportunity to share some of their life experience, some of their opportunities to say, hey, look, I've been there. I get it. I was in that position before. Here's what I would do if I were you. And there's that exchange actually helps create powerful relationships. And that's, back to being a people person, being willing to just honor someone's like experience by kind of going, hey, like you've done some amazing stuff. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, I have no shame in asking advice on social media. Like, I mean, we've done our own socials for the last 12, 13 years, I mean, we got a decent amount of followers, but everything we have is real, and I like to know exactly where we are, where we stand. And I still have no shame in asking somebody who's doing social media at a major who's 26 years old.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, how'd you get that done?
Yeah.
I've always done this. You mean to tell me this is working better for you guys? Maybe I should try that? Dude, there's no shame in it. Yep. Don't be afraid to ask.
Well, and actually you bring up another great perspective for, maybe some of us who are a little bit older, that we're afraid to ask someone younger than us how they're doing something. Like, give them that gift as well, because they know that there's stuff that we've done that they have never done, and they're going to be coming to us at some point as well. So it's it's really a great opportunity to create that exchange of wisdom and experience.
Yeah, that's why there's no I in we, and it all reverts around one thing: team.
Yep.
It's a team effort between the whole staff and all parties involved. Let's make this happen.
Yep. And how apropos, this is Teamwork Tuesday. I do each of the days I have a little thing that we'll do a talk on. And Tuesdays it's teamwork, Mondays it's momentum, Wednesdays it's warriors, Thursdays it's transformation, and Fridays it's gratitude. So each of those days kind of go, okay, what are we going to do today to build momentum? What are we going to do today to celebrate team? What are we going to do today to step up, be a warrior? How are we transforming? And then at the end of the week, how can we be grateful? So with that being said, I am ever so grateful for you taking your most valuable asset and investing in everyone who participates in this, investing in me. It's, obviously watching your success over the years has been, insane. I lament a little bit that I'm not in the music industry like I was, but my heart is still there and I incorporate it in everything that I do. But God bless you for keeping at it and keeping the flow and getting the music out there to really help people transform their state.
Doug, I really appreciate you inviting to have me on the show, dude. That's awesome. I love doing podcasts.
It's brilliant. This is again, great way to technology, leveling playing field, right? I mean, who knew 20 years ago that anyone could come out and create such wonderful conversations and add so much value? And you don't need a big giant studio. You don't need a radio station. All you need is a microphone, a computer, and a website.
Yeah, that's usually the way it works. It's funny how things work that way, isn't it?
Yeah. Where there's a will, there's a way.
That's it, my brother.
Awesome. Well, if there's anything that obviously I could do for you, me contacts, Sue contacts, me resources, Sue resources. I truly appreciate you for who you are and who you aren't. And I look forward to, participating in more rock in the future for sure.
Absolutely, brother.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you, and thank you again so much, and we will rock soon.
You got it, Doug. Thanks, brother. Thanks for having us on. I really appreciate you taking the time to hear our story.
You got it, brother. Thank you.
All right,
Talk to you in a bit. Peace. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging with us. And remember to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast right here. And we look forward to serving you even more. Remember, download your free guided hypnotic meditation at guidedhypnotic.com. That's guidedhypnotic.com, where you'll get your free anxiety-busting meditation. We look forward to serving you, and if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to reach out. All right, we love you for who you are and who you aren't. God bless.